To get started on this exercise, you should have downloaded the Line Shading Technique Illustrator file. When you open it up in Adobe Illustrator, the first thing to note is that you've got two different layers. There's the drawing layer we're going to be working on and the tracing layer that has each of the different examples. Now the whole purpose of this exercise is for you to practice this technique that we're going to use for our project. We'll start with the first panel over here. Before we begin, this technique is going to involve heavy use of lines used in Illustrator. Now of course, to draw lines you've got a variety of different tools, but I highly recommend using the pen tool to give you the most accuracy in placing of your lines. Next, with the pen tool selected, I'm going to set my fill color to be none, and my stroke color, for now, I'm going to make it red just so we can see it as we're working on it. I'm also going to open up my stroke panel. You can open it up here, but I also highly recommend that you have the traditional panel fully open so that you can see all of the options. I'm going to drag this off over here so I have quick access to it. With this done, here's how this technique is going to work. We're going to start off by drawing a single line at our beginning point. So from here, holding down Shift and dragging to here. You can then deselect your line, Shift Command A, and let's draw another line at the ending point, starting here and here. Notice that when I drew these lines, I did from top to bottom, and I did it for both of them. In other words, I kept both of them consistent. Next, we need to blend this together. So with it selected, I'm going to use my Blend tool, which is found towards the bottom of your toolbox. You can click once on the first line, and then again on the last line, and you can see how it's blending everything together. Now the next thing we need to do is to customize how it's blending. By default, it's going to try to give a smooth, consistent blend all the way across. If you double click on your tool icon, this will bring up the blending options, and we're going to change the spacing from smooth to a specific number of steps. With this, I can dial in any number that I want to be between this. So for instance, if I typed in 10 and I hit the Tab key, you can see now there's 10 lines in between. What I like to do is to make sure preview is on, use my up arrow, and this will allow me to see exactly how many are placed in there and what I need. In this case, we need 30 of them to blend all the way across. Once you're finished, you can say OK. Now with this done, this will allow me to edit any of the lines that I have, and it'll automatically update the blending between them. But if I want to edit the individual lines and be able to select them, the last thing I need to do is to expand what I have. So with it still selected, we're going to go up to Object, down to Expand, and from here we're simply going to say OK and commit to that. Now I can go back and I can select any individual line that I need, and it's automatically expanded. If you need to, you may also have to ungroup it. Let's try the same thing now with the B. Again, we're going to use our pen tool. We'll start by drawing a straight line at the top. Then we'll draw a straight line at the bottom. The size of these lines needs to be 0.75 in size. So I'm going to change my stroke size to be 0.75 points. And the bottom line is going to be a 4-point line. So notice that it gets thinner and then thicker at the bottom. You can then use your blend tool, clicking once at the bottom, then at the top. You can see how it gets thinner as it goes to the top to the bottom from there. Next, let's see if we can space these out a bit more. Double click on your icon, choose a specific number of steps, and then we can use our arrow keys to arrow down until they're all nice and stepped across here. 40 is the number we need for this. Now in addition to this, we also want to change our line profile. So I'm going to go ahead and go to Object and expand it. We'll say OK. The line profile allows you to change it from a uniform thickness to one of these tapered ends or something with a variety in between. We're going to use width profile number 1. Now you can do this ahead of time. However, this is going to give you an error and sometimes a rendering issue. So I always change my profile after I expand it, not before or not during. Let's try number C now. You can see this is just a half circle. In order to set this up, I'm going to use my ellipse tool and simply draw off my half circle ellipse right where I need it to be. That looks good. Use my direct selection tool to erase away the top anchor. And since I've got my top line, I'm going to click and drag and make a copy of it down to the very bottom, right on top of it. If I need to, I can make small adjustments with those. Now I can use my width tool, or excuse me, my blending tool, and blend both of those together. You can see now it only put one of them in between, but that's okay. We can double click on it, change it from smooth to specific steps, and increase the number that we need until they're all evenly spaced. In this case, we need 10 of them. We'll say OK. Now with this done, let's expand it. We'll say OK to that. Let's change our profile to be profile number 4, to be the thicker and thinner side. Also, we can set the width of it to be 4 points. With this done, now you get an idea of shading and also a volumetric curvature of whatever area you're working from. Now this will work for any kind of line that you draw. So with my pen tool, if I wanted to draw these curved lines, one direction, so that'll be my starting point. Then I'm simply going to have a single curve down here at the bottom. Now let's use our blend tool and blend both of these together. Double click on the tool options, a specific number of steps, then use your arrow key to arrow up until they all have one on top of them. Looks like 15 is what we need for this one. In this case, in order to give it a little bit of shading going back and forth between it, we can change the width profile to the second one. Let's make it much thicker so we can see these as well too. So this is the technique that we're going to be using in order to shade an area or a plane. Notice that you can change the profile in order to add some shading. The width and the spacing between it is what's going to give you the ability to blend these different widths and different densities together. Let's try it now on some actual objects. First, we can do it with the little square that's up here. If I wanted to shade this off, obviously it's already dark, so I just need to give it the ability to look like it's shaded in a little bit better. To do this, I can of course use my pen tool and draw off one line at the start, and then one line at the end. Can then use my blending tool to blend both of these together. Double click on it, and then let's choose a specific number of steps. Now it's up to you how many steps you feel is necessary. Since this is a darker pattern, maybe we want to have just a few of them. And also, while we still have it selected, let's change our stroke color to be white. That'll give us an idea of how it looks from here. From here, if I need to, I can expand it and change my color profile. Excuse me, my line profile. This gives it a much more tapered edge and also a much more gradual feel to its design. However, there is a slight problem when I do this. Notice that the ends of this still are straight across. They're horizontal, while the edge of it is obviously going at an angle. Now, in order to compensate for this, we'll need to either crop it off or readjust my design so that it looks correct. If I was to rotate these all the way down and maybe have them going off the edge, there's one solution that could work. However, if I wanted it to stay just inside of that particular area, there's a couple of other things we could do. First off, I'm going to make my lines just a little bit longer than is necessary. Notice that it's going all the way off the edge. Then I'm going to use my pen tool, and I'm going to redraw the area that I'm working on. Just want to be careful not to get inside of another line that I've already drawn. So now that I've got a shape, and this shape is, it's hard to see because it's the same color. We'll make it this color. So I've got a shape on top of all of my lines. That's the same shape as my face of my little square. When I select my shape and all the lines, I can go up to Object, down to Clipping Mask, and I can make a clipping mask out of it. When I mask it off, now you see I've got nice straight edges along those edges too. Let's do that again for this one. Again, we'll zoom in, draw off a starting line, excuse me, let's grab our pen tool. There we go. We'll draw a starting line. We'll fill this line in with a specific color. In this case, we'll make it white. I'm going to draw another line. This one's going to go all the way down here. And let's blend it together. Use your blending tool to blend both of those. Again, double click on the blend tool to open up the options and reduce the number down to here. So it's hard to see, but notice that I'm drawing these lines nice all the way past what I need to. With this done, now let's draw off a shape on top of it. Again, I'm going to make my shape just something different so I can see it. Then you can select both the shape and the lines, go up to Object, and create a clipping mask. Now it's masked off inside of that entire area. Repeat this process again for each of the faces, creating a shaded kind of look. If you want, you can even add a drop shadow or a cast shadow to your design. Doing that's as simple as drawing a line. Of course, we'll give it a color. We'll draw our ending line. We'll have it go off the edge here. And then we'll blend both of our shapes together. Again, you need to make these longer than is necessary, so maybe I'll do something like this. Now I can draw off the shape that I want my cast shadow to be. Again, just to be able to see it, I'm going to make it a different color. I'm going to draw off the outer edge of what I want. I'll lock these down so I don't accidentally select them too. Now with both my lines and the shape selected, I can go to Object, Clipping Mask, and Make. And now I've got a cast shadow that stays inside of that area too. This can be performed for any of the different areas that we're working on. Remember, if you're working on a curved shape, you want to have curved lines that go around it. You could use curved lines like this, or you could also play around with the thickness and thinness of it. Here's what I mean by that. Let's say I had a thick line, in this case we'll make it white, on the edge. Then I had a thinner line as it goes around. With this done, now when I blend both of these together, it gives the idea of a curved type surface simply because it's getting thicker and thinner around each of the edges. Let's change the number of steps. Change out my blending, and that looks pretty good from there. So this is also an option that you can work from. Again, to make it look smooth, we need to mask off our area. Whoops, didn't mean to click on it. First, I'm going to lock mine down so I don't accidentally click on it. Again, mask off your area by selecting it and carefully matching the curvature. Let's do the same down here. Now that I've got a shape, let's select the shape and my lines, Object, Mask, and Make. Now it's masked off inside of that area. For something complex like this lens, we want to have multiple different line styles, and we also want to overlay it perhaps with a pattern that allows you to blend multiple different lines on top of it. Here's how I would create this. First, I'm going to start off by doing some simple concentric circles. We'll do a circle in the center. I'm going to copy and paste it. Let's do a larger circle on the outside. And let's blend both of these together. Okay, that's looking pretty good so far. From here, let's get this outside edge and also the other sides too. So again, I'm going to copy and paste another circle right in the center of it. By the way, Command F will give me the ability to do that. Copy, Command F, we'll put it in the center. Since this is a slightly different version, maybe I'll make these lines a little bit thinner. So instead of them being 1 point, we'll make them half of a point, and we'll use our blend tool to blend both of these together. Specific number of steps. And then now you can see I've got a different color inside of this. For these two rings, notice that they've got a darker and a lighter side to each one of them, so it looks like it's three-dimensional. Here's how I would create something like this. We'll zoom in. I'll paste, let's paste one right in front. This time I'm going to change the profile that I'll work in. So we'll start off with this one, copy and paste. Again, we'll use our blend tool to blend both of these together. Give it a specific number of steps. That looks pretty good for now. And then we need to expand it. Once it's expanded, let's change our profile to be something like profile number 4, or excuse me, not profile number 4. Let's do profile number, there we go, number 1. Notice now it has a darker and a lighter side to it as well. The fun part is I can select these and I can actually rotate it whatever direction I want it to be. To create another one, we'll simply paste in front. We'll pick up where it left off. So here's one. Let's do another one. We'll blend both of these together. Again, a specific number of steps. In this case, I did it roughly about 8 or 9. Before we change our profile, we need to expand it and then change it to profile number 1. If I rotate it the opposite way, now when I back out, you can see how it has a lighter and darker style of effect. So essentially, we're just doing some concentric circles and we're changing up the thickness and the spacing and the density of each one of these. At any time, and as long as you haven't expanded it, you can always add more circles to it. By selecting them, make sure it's selected, double click on your options. I can make it more or less dense from here. But once it's expanded, you can't make that change. Now, if I wanted to add the highlight on top of this, we're going to use a pattern overlay. In order to do this, let's use our circle. I'm going to make this off the edge here. And I'm going to fill this circle in with a nice pattern. I'm going to open up my swatches. And from my swatches, we'll go down to our libraries, down to patterns, our basic decorative ones, and I like to use the textures or the lines. Let's open textures and see what we get. With textures open, this will give you a variety of different textured lines. Some of them will work better than others. Let's see if we can find one that's nice and small and dense and works well with what we've got. I think this will work well. With this one selected, we now need to make our texture solid white. So with it selected in our swatches panel, you can double click on it. We can then select all of these lines. Let's change the line color to be white. When we're done, we can say done at the top. Can now place this on top of my area. Of course, we can get rid of the stroke outline. And now when I back out, you see how it has this nice little pattern overlay. If you want, you can play around with a variety of different line styles. Some of them can be thicker or thinner. Some of them can be straight lines. Whatever works best for your composition. But that's how we've done the pattern overlay for this one. If we wanted to do something like this chrome design, let's start off by creating a series of concentric circles inside of our area. We'll draw a central circle. We'll give it a black stroke. And I'm going to make mine relatively thin, say half of a point. We'll copy Command-C and then Command-F to paste a version of it right in front. And we'll make a larger version of it. And then let's use our blend tool to blend together in between those. We can then add a specific number of steps until it's nice and well filled in. Now this doesn't have to be 100% pixel perfect. And for the sake of time, I'm going to keep mine relatively less dense. From here, we can now expand it. We'll go to Object and Expand and break it apart. In order to get the little lines that are going out of this, we need to be able to cut into this area. Now to do that, what we don't want to use is our eraser tool. With the eraser tool, this is simply going to cut into it. It's not going to give you the type of results that you want. Instead, let's use our shape builder tool. I'm going to use the line segment tool and draw off some line segments through this area. So in this case, we'll do just kind of a wedge shape like this, and maybe one more going through here. With this done, let's actually do one more. I'm going to do one more just as a small set for this. With this done, notice how you've got some thinner bits and some thicker bits. That's what we want to be able to do with these line segments. So I'm going to zoom in, grab my Shape Builder tool, and double click on the Shape Builder tool to bring up the options. Make sure Merge Mode Click Stroke Splits the Path is checked on. This is an important thing to have turned on. With it done, I can now set my stroke color to be black, and instead of 5 point, let's go ahead and make it something thinner, like 1/4 of a point. Then I can select all of my lines and be very careful, click on the line once, and it will change, sometimes it takes 2 clicks, the width profile of that line. It also helps to zoom in so that you can see everything nice and easily. Let's bring it up to here. There we go. Again, carefully click on the line. It may take multiple clicks, but eventually it will pick up the edge of it and it will change the width of that profile. For the sake of time, I won't do the entire thing, but you can see the vast difference between those two different ones. Additionally, you can now use your direct selection tool and select those lines, and you can change their profile to be a tapered type in. Once you're finished with this, you can then get rid of the path line so that you can see how it will affect the overall shape of your entire composition. Repeating this process will give you those lighter areas inside of your concentric circles. This will also work for making your circles much darker too. Let's do it for this line segment. Again, make sure your areas are selected first. So we're going to select these lines, choose our Shape Builder tool. I'm going to set my stroke now to be 1 point, and then carefully zooming in, clicking on each individual line, I can change the width of it. At this time, we're only changing the width and not the profile. Do be careful not to click on the inside too, else that will get the inside filled in with that one. That's absolutely not what we want. And again, for the sake of time, I'm not going to do all of them, but this will give you an idea of what we're looking for. With this done, we can get rid of our lines. You can also select the lines that you have, and if you need to, you can change their profile to be something different as well. And so that'll give you an idea of how you can create those wavy lines and different highlights and shadows within a concentric circle. The last thing you're going to do for this exercise is apply these techniques to this object. Notice that you've got a variety of different shapes and a variety of different planes, and also within those planes you've got a variety of different shadows and highlights. So as you're creating them, use the techniques and take it one plane at a time. If it's curved, you need to have curved lines. If it's a flat plane, you need to have flat lines. The final thing that you can do is also create an outline around your object and on the inside edges, but don't depend on them for doing any of the shading or the volumetric rendering of your entire composition. When you're finished with this, save it up as an Illustrator file, and that's what you're going to turn into our class page.